different light. And then the second part, we're going to be studying grace, mercy, and faith. We're going to be studying the salvation of Ishmael and Hagar. So, if you would first turn in your Bibles to the book of Galatians. It's just after Romans and before Ephesians, and chapter 4 and verse 19. Paul is saying, "My little children, of whom I travailed in birth." In other words, he's saying, I've won you to Christ. You're my children. You know, he takes a personal concern for them. He says, again, until Christ be formed in you. That's sanctification, and that's what he's wanting for his. That's what Brother Hahn wants for you. That's what I want for you. Is that this is why you're here. The more you study the Word of God, the more you cleanse yourself. You see things spiritually, and there are a lot of people that's been saved many years longer than you that are in the world still. They are Christians who may have been faithful at one time, but they've left. The idea is, as you're studying the Word of God, it keeps you close to Christ. And if you're close to Christ, then you will grow with Him, and He will lead you and guide you and direct you in your life. And that's what Paul desires for his people. You can see the preacher's heart here, as it breaks his heart when people will stray. But he also is so concerned. My little children, of whom I travail in birth again until Christ be formed in you. I desire to be present with you now and to change my voice, for I stand in doubt of you. Tell me, ye that desire to be under the law, do you not hear the law? For it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by a bondmaid and the other by a free woman. But he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh. But he that was of the free woman was by promise. Now what you're seeing is the separation, and what we're going to be studying, the first part of this today is the separation of that. What he's talking about of the flesh, that was the sin of Abraham and Sarah. Sarah, they couldn't wait for God. They couldn't wait for God's gift that He had promised them. They just thought they would take it into their own and say, well, Sarah says, okay, here's Hagar. You're complaining all the time, but I can't give you a child. Here, take her. And they did, and there was a child born by them. And because of that, that is a child of the flesh. That is a child that should never have been born, but it is an example of the child born of the flesh. And it says here, but he who is of the bondwoman was born after the flesh, but he was born of the free woman after the promise. Which things are an allegory, for these are the two covenants, the one from Mount Sinai of Moses, and which gendered to bondage, which is of Hagar. Are you understanding that? That Mount Sinai is where God gave the law, and so if you were under the law, you were under the burden of the law, right? And this is what he's saying. This is her. This is Hagar, and then he says, for this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and answereth to Jerusalem, which now is and is in bondage with her children. But Jerusalem, which is above, is free. That's the heavenly Jerusalem, which is the mother of us all. For it was written, Rejoice, thou barren that bearest not, break forth and cry, thou that travailest not, for the desolate hath many more children than she which hath an husband. Now we, brethren, as Isaac are the children of promise. For as then he that was born after the flesh persecuted him that was born after the Spirit, even so it is now. Nevertheless, what saith the Scriptures? Cast out the bondwoman and her son, for the son of the bondwoman shall not be heir with the son of the free woman. So then, brethren, ye are not the children of the bondwoman, but of the free. What was happening is these Christians were going back under the law. Now understand, many of these were Jewish people who had been won to Christ. And you know, it's hard to break away from works. Works is hard to break away. What I'm saying is in our minds, because we are humans, in our minds we are thinking that we have to do something to be saved. We have to do something to keep our salvation. If you stumble and fall one time, you lose your salvation. You got to come back. And well, I was listening to a song this weekend. I always shake my head. You say, I'll have to go back under the water. No, you got to go back under the blood. But no, you don't have to go back under anything, right? Because you have been under the blood of Christ, and to go back is to say His blood wasn't sufficient for your salvation. You see what I'm saying? You are separated from the world. You're going to sin. We all sin. I don't like it. I wish that I could be that way, and one day we will walk the portals of glory perfect. Yes. Perfect. But today we have the Spirit of God, a Spirit of Christ dwelling within us that teaches us right from wrong and the right steps to take and the directions to go. And we will stumble off the path from time to time. But we come back and say, forgive us, God, and He will forgive us and put us back on the straight path. We don't have to go back under the blood again. If we did, the blood would have been of no value. But the blood of Christ saved us, and so we are the free woman. We are under the promise, and we don't have to go back and are not supposed to go back and put ourselves under the law. And that's what Paul was battling the whole time, fighting people that were teaching people to not go back to the law and do the works of the law, but to stay in faith with Christ. Trust Him in faith and be faithful. And so now let's go to our text this morning in Genesis. And this is an interesting story. As I studied this, you feel for the bondwoman and you feel for Ishmael. They didn't ask to be where they are. They didn't ask for this. But now they're here. And God allows things to happen. It's not right. It was sin. Abraham sinned. But God allows these things to happen so that we have an example of right and wrong. It's not that we have enough right and wrong. But verse number 9, it says, and Sarah saw the son of Hagar. Well, let's go back to verse number 8. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. And remember, weaning of a child is somewhere around 3 years. That's how women took care of their children. A lot of children are sick today because... And when they come up with, how many of you ladies know about Similac? Anybody ever hear of Similac? Well, that kind of took away the child away from the breast of the mother, and it gave them a fake, which I was raised on a farm, and newborn calves need the antibiotics and the nutrition from their mother right away. Right away. It is hard. They need that. That helps them to grow and to not get sick. And so this is the same way with children. But anyways, she had him for like probably 3 years or so before he was weaned and ready to go. And they had a big feast. And now what happens in verse number 9? And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, which he had borne unto Abraham, mocking. You know, one time Hagar was Sarah's friend. Sarah had her. She had come up through the ranks and became her helper, her assistant, her servant, and she liked her enough that she let her husband have her. I'll tell you that. But since that happened, there was a separation between the two, and now there was a mocking. She had borne unto Abraham the child which she had borne unto Abraham, the son which she had borne unto Abraham. Mocking. The word mocking there, it's the same word for laughter, but in the sense that it is here, it would be Ishmael was laughing at Isaac. Ishmael was laughing at Isaac. Ishmael was making fun of Isaac. Let me just explain as we go through this. Abraham had Ishmael. At age 13, God had come up to Abraham and gave him the covenant and the covenant of circumcision. And so at 13, Ishmael was circumcised. All this time, Ishmael as a father of one son, Ishmael. What do you think he did with that son? As far as Abraham knew, even though God told him you're going to have another son, or going to have a son of promise, Abraham raised Ishmael as if he was going to be heir to his kingdom. Abraham, as a man's man, would have taught Ishmael how to shoot a bow, would have taught Ishmael how to hunt, would have taught Ishmael how to raise the sheep and take care of the cattle and do the farm things that a young boy would do, that he should have done. Abraham raised Ishmael up as his next heir. Ishmael was his pride and joy. Everywhere he went, he would have introduced Ishmael as my son. This is my son. This is my son. This is my son. Abraham loved Ishmael. Ishmael was his son. And nothing that you can do would change that. He would always be his son. And so now we see as we go here, wherefore she said in verse number 10, wherefore she said unto Abraham, cast out the bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even Isaac. I don't know if your wife has ever come to you angry and I have to be careful how I word all of this. Abraham and Sarah was not happy with Abraham at this point. She's not happy with this whole situation. She has a baby. Now, let's step into Sarah's shoes for just a minute. Sarah has been given the baby of promise. God promised this baby to her. And for 25 years, they have been waiting for this baby. Matter of fact, they have gone to such a point that this baby is never going to come. Abraham at one time said to God, he said, what are you going to do about me? I'm childless. Well, I'm going to make my servant heir to my throne. I can't imagine how he said that to God. And God said, no, it's going to come out of your bowels. And then the next chapter, okay, well, let's have Hagar, and that'll be out of the bowels of Abraham. That'll be the one. And then God said, no, Sarah's going to have a son. Now Sarah has a son. Now, mothers, when you pick up that baby and you nurse that baby for 3 years, is there an affection for that baby? Is there a special bond, a special love for that baby? Yes. Yes. Yes, there is. There's a special bond that that baby has with you. Now, the baby is weaned. And, I mean, a 3-year-old, a 3-year-old, kind of wild, maybe, I was the perfect 3-year-old, but some are not. They have this big party, and Sarah looks out, and you know that this has been building for some time. Abraham is spending his time with Ishmael. She's babysitting and taking care of Isaac. And I'm sure Abraham spent time with Isaac. But here we have this situation. And finally, Sarah sees this Ishmael mocking or laughing at Isaac. And she had, well, let's just say the pot boiled over. Yeah. And Abraham, I don't know if any of you men have ever been there, but it's one of those cases where you just shut up and let it happen. And this is what we find here. Cast out the bondwoman and her son. And so Hagar, she was a slave girl. She was a maid, but she had become more than that at one point. And that's where Galatians says that Abraham had 2 sons, the one from a handmaid or a bondmaid and the other from a free woman. And her son. Let me say something and share something with you here as I studied this chapter. Throughout the chapter, there's something noticeable to me. In previous chapters, we saw where Ishmael was born, and then we saw where Ishmael was circumcised at age 13. In this chapter, you do not find the name Ishmael anywhere. I found that a little strange. Perhaps that's because I'm a little strange. I don't know. But I keep seeing where the lad and the son of the bondwoman, this and that, his name is not mentioned at all in this chapter. The next time we see Ishmael's name mentioned is in chapter 25 when he and his brother Isaac go and bury Abraham. And at that time, Isaac is 75 and Ishmael is 88 when they go to bury the sons. Isaac lives to be 180. Ishmael lives to be 137 or 138. We're talking about Ishmael. And the thing, verse 11, and the thing was very grievous in Abraham's sight. What that word means, grievous, we think, he was, No, that what it really means, the word means, is evil exceedingly. Abraham is told by his wife he's got to get rid of this child and this woman that he had been taken care of now for going on 17 years. And he has raised this boy up. And now he's just been told, you got to get rid of her and him. And you might say he had a sleepless night. Have you all ever had a sleepless night? Well, I've had some sleepless nights. And God said, I love this. God woke him up. God said unto Abraham, let it not be grievous in thy sight because of the lad and because of thy bondwoman. In all that Sarah hath said unto thee, hearken unto her voice. For in Isaac shall thy seed be called. Let it not be grievous. Don't be angry. Don't be angry. Do what she says. Isaac in thy seed shall be called. And then also the son of the bondwoman will I make a great nation because of thy seed. He has promised that Isaac will be safe. He has promised that Isaac will be a great nation. So understand these next words when Abraham sends them out. He has God's promise that he will take care of them. Right? So understand that when Abraham sends these two out, he's not sending them out on a venture where they will die. God's going to take care of them. And so we see, and also the son of the bondwoman will I make a great nation because of thy seed. Actually, if you look at Genesis, well, I have it in the notes, Genesis 17:20. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him and will make him fruitful and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. Understand, when Abraham left these two to go out, he knew God was going to care for them. Now we have Ishmael's journey. Oh, what a story of love and mercy and grace. This is the story, if you look at it in that light, is the story of your and my salvation. We were on the path of death, for the wages of sin is death. No hope. How can a dead man live? Let's understand that one thing about salvation. Now, this is so very important. If you get this down, it really helps you. The Bible says you were dead in trespasses and sin. How can a dead man live? Now, we have instances of dead men coming to life in the Bible. How did they come to life? Jesus spoke to them, and they came to life. So understand that. You get this down. This is very important. How can a dead man do works for salvation? They're dead. Yes. Understand that. Oh yeah, you're still alive and walking and we're around doing everything, but you're dead. And as far as God's eyes you're looking, you're dead. I don't know, you can go get baptized 336 times. You're dead. Unless Christ speaks to you, you're dead. I understand that. And so we're going to, the voice of God has to speak to your heart. Mercy picks you out. Grace, His unmerited love and favor, is given unto you. Faith is given to you that you might say, God, forgive me of my sins and save me. When that happens like that, God gets all of the honor and all of the glory. Yes, we have to move. We have to move. Well, there's something we have to do, and we're going to see if we can get to it here. There's something that she had to do. Abraham rose up early in the morning and took bread and bottled water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder. Loaded her up. Understand that you can look at countries today where women carry these huge loads on their backs. It's just, we want to make something big out of this because of our time. But it's not our time. This is 4,000 years ago. And he gave it unto Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, and the child. Now, he did not put the child on her shoulder. He's an 18-year-old boy or 17-year-old boy. Understand that. I went to get a picture to put into my letter that I send out. And all the pictures of this shows a young child, maybe 5 or 6 years old. This is a 17-year-old boy. He was 13 when he was circumcised. 3 years later, after the baby was weaned, he had to be 16, 17, 18 years old. And so Abraham rose up early in the morning, and they departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. So here's what happened. Abraham sent him out early in the morning. He woke up Hagar, grab your son, you're going. You're leaving. I guarantee you tears were flowing out of Abraham's eyes when he did that. And their eyes as well. Where are we going to go? What are we doing? I don't know. Get out. Get on the road. I think she perhaps was trying to head back to Egypt. That's where she was from. And the water was spent in the bottle, and she cast the child under one of the shrubs. So they had moved and wandered around in the wilderness all this time, and finally had come to a point where they were parched. And I have a picture. I don't know if you have it. Do you want to put it up there? This is kind of the wilderness that they were wandering around in. This is the wilderness. This is down by Mount Sinai. This is down that Sinai Peninsula. It's just desert. And they were wandering around in this desert. What hope is there? Do you see any wells or any water there? And so she perhaps thought she was off the beaten path, but she was on the exact path God wanted her to be on. You have to understand that. She went down over against a good way off as like a bow shot from her son, and said, I don't want to see the death of the child. And she sat over against him and lifted up her voice and wept. And I want you to understand this. I want you to see this. She lifted up her voice and wept. But look at what the next verse said. And God heard the voice of the lad. Wait a minute. She's over here weeping and crying because she has nobody to speak to. The lad has somebody to speak to. Remember who raised this lad? Abraham. Do you not think that Abraham told him about God and the greatness of God? Do you not think that Abraham told him about praying to God and how God had answered his prayers time after time after time after time? So we find the lad is praying unto God, and God hears the voice of the lad and blesses the woman. Arise, and it says, Verse 17, and God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel called Hagar out of heaven and said unto her, What aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not, for God hath heard the voice of the lad. Not her voice, because she wasn't crying to God. She was just weeping because of her situation. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thy hand, for I make thee a great nation. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. Now, here it is. This is salvation. She saw it. God opened her eyes. This is how you were saved. God opened the spiritual eye. God opened your eyes. And then you saw the well of water. But what has to happen? She's still going to die. What has to happen? What's the next thing we see? And she went. There you go. That's faith. She went and filled the bottle with water and gave the lad drink. So not only this is how salvation works. The eyes are opened. You see the water. The water is the Spirit of God, and you go and you drink of that water, and then you give it away to someone else. That's how it works. You get saved, you give it away to somebody else. That spiritual water, it's within you. You want others to have. This water is refreshing. Is the Spirit of God refreshing in you? Is He refreshing in you? Are you excited? Do you understand what's inside of you? That spiritual water that's there? That water has saved you. That water will save someone else if you give it away. God opened her eyes. And God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. Well, he had to. He didn't have sheep and cattle. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. Egypt is a type of the world. So, I don't know what happened to the bell. Is it supposed to ring? Charlie left. Maybe the bell don't work anymore. What's that? Ishmael. Yeah. The word Ishmael means God will hear.